Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's July 8th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And really, this is a range day. However, we still traded outside the. Here's your overnight highs, your overnight lows. We traded outside that on both sides, but still mostly it's up. I mean, you can still see the roller coaster EMA from side to side. The deal is, though, this range is 25 points wide. So I can remember not too long ago when a 25-point move for a day was huge. So we went 25 points up and maybe the same back down again. So maybe we didn't quite go 25 up, but it's close enough. So really, this range is big enough that you got these nice trends in here. So you got to play these trends. You don't want to be, I mean, look down here. There's no consistent bounce area. Maybe right across here we had a, that is actually the close from yesterday. You can see it. And once we got back in there, we tested that a few times. But other than that, there's no consistent lows here. And there's really no consistent highs. You know, we turned down way up here and then we turned down halfway back up. So you can't really play this as a range. You got to play these trends. And the low support, what didn't hold, the high support didn't hold. The prices pushed on through. So when people tell me that they trade this as a range day, I just cringe. And this is not a, I mean, sure, you could call this a range day, but you can't trade this like a range day. You got to trade these trends within. So, and really, when as I narrow out here or broaden my chart, I guess I should say, I'm not narrowing it, I'm broadening it. But as I broaden this out so you can see at a higher level, or maybe I should say see at a lower level as well, you will see that there's even shorter term trends in here that you really need to be playing. And, you know, people send me their chart. There's not one trend line on it, and they're, you know, they picked out some spot where they entered, and you got to follow the rules. If you don't, you're going to be in big trouble. Well, let's back out a little bit here. And early on, we had this. I mean, this is a pretty strong trend, and it's an even stronger trend. We had one here. We had the break with a couple leg correction. We had a steeper one. And there's actually smaller ones, the brown ones within there. So you got to narrow down into this stuff and play every trend line. Put it on there, even if it doesn't play out, or, you know, some of the more micro ones won't play out because the bigger pattern will overtake it. But if you draw them on there, it's not that hard to see. Just like here, there's some smaller patterns working back to this trend line, but you see every time it gets back to that trend line, it's taken off until it doesn't, and you didn't get a setup here. So you wouldn't have got burned right here. But let's back out a little more. I want to make this a little bigger. This 7 o'clock came right as we turned this corner here. And at that point, maybe you could say it looks like a range day. But when it went on through here and kept going with this trend, this is a trend day, and you got to play this trend day. So just keep that in mind. So again, it looks a little like a range at this point, but you still have this trend line working up. You can see it clearly here. And if you measured the first leg up, right there, so we're looking for at least a measured leg, hopefully, if prices break higher. And we turn the corner right here and start working back down. And notice you get a first entry and then a second entry. That's a second entry long with a nice signal bar. It closed one tick off its high, confirming a key entry point. Really, you actually had 1, 2, 3 touches already, but getting one further out here just further confirms it. But on that second entry, just take that trade. If you take that trade, unfortunately, you don't get a runner there. But then you get a first entry short, and you move higher, and you get a second entry short, and it fails right at the key entry point. It's just a first entry long, but look, it's a great signal bar, and it's a failed second entry short, so that's a counter trend failure with the trend right at the key entry point. Go long right there, and if you go long right there, you probably catch a runner, and you can ride this all the way. I mean, no reason not to even think about exiting that till up here where it starts going sideways. So that's an easy, just call it 31.43 up to, I'd say 58. I mean, that's a huge move. 43 to 58. I mean, that may be the only trade you need today. But notice where they're at. They're at the key entry point. And, you know, people will be entering way up here on stuff like this, and way up here, there's a second entry right there. I know at least one of you entered right there. Don't enter there. You're just coming off the highs, so it's past time to come back to the trend line. So yeah, you may see a few of them work, but you don't enter up here. That doesn't follow our trading pattern. So anyway, prices continue to go up, and there is a midline in here, and we are pretty much in that upper portion of it right there. Get that just right. So there's a couple here you might take off of that. I still don't see anything I like here. If that would have broke lower and turned up, you still got to go long at the very high of the day right there. It's just never a good idea. So, but once we've touched this upper side again, and we start coming back, you at least got to get back to here. And you want to take a second entry too, because the market moves in twos. And that's why we look for second entries. That's why second entries are so powerful, because the market moves in twos. So when you get one leg back and then see this nice signal bar here, you're probably going to get another leg. And actually there's a second entry right there. That's the one somebody took right there. But notice you had one leg, and this is just your second leg, but there's two swings in it. And if you wait for that next leg, and you do get a setup here because you get a triple touch of this low, and you also get a triple touch of that. You could have gone long right there, and then it works. I didn't mark this one because we weren't back to the key entry point, but if you saw, you know, if you've got the range here and you see that's all of that, you can take that trade right there. But you can't take it right here. Even though it's off that midline, it's just a first entry. And the market moves in twos. Yeah, it might work for a scalp, but it's not worth it. It's not worth risking, because there's a good chance we get another leg back. And just so happens the next leg has two legs in it. But if you drew your range here, you know we're not back to the lows yet, which is the only place you can enter. It's the only reason you can enter right there, because it's a double test of that support area. Otherwise, wait for it to get here. Notice what happens. It breaks out, and I guarantee you there's somebody watching this video that went long right there. When we teach you over and over, don't trade breakouts, because they're usually going to fail. Even if they're going to continue on, like right here, they still fail on the breakout. And then you get a double test, and then it turns down. So follow the rules. And another thing too, we'd already had our measured move right in here, and so we'd pushed on past that a little bit here. And you don't want to be going short up here at all. This is too strong a trend. Don't be trying to pick tops. Wait till you get a break and a new high, and then something going in the other direction, or wait till you get something confirmed in the other direction. And here we broke lower, try to go higher once, you try to go higher twice, it fails, and it turns down. And if you didn't like that one, then you get a failed second entry long right there, and that's even better. And now it's off heading to the lows. And if you measure that first leg, drop it down, guess what? You get a perfect measured move. And with two legs down and no retest yet, what might happen here? There's a good chance you may get a retest of the highs. So I'd be real careful going short here after those two measured legs down. And there is a second entry here, but look at your trend line, and there's at least a couple of you got trapped right here. And I could see I mean, this is, if you lost on this trade, that's not the end of the world, because even a good trader could get fooled here, because we could be going lower. That's the first break of this trend line working down. And I actually drew this off the lows and drug it up. And how do you know where to put it? You don't really. You just put it where it fits the best. You know, I originally probably had it right there, but when we didn't get back to it, I just pulled it down to the closes right there. And then you can see it worked out until we got a break, new low, and it looked like maybe we would go higher. And this is just a exact perfect repeat pattern of this. So notice what happens. You get a first entry, second entry, and it fails. Shoots up and then sells off. First entry, second entry, it fails. It tries to go higher, then turns down. But there's another thing here. Notice that's congestion. That's a little bit congestive. This is definitely congestion. Both of these. Anytime you get 3 or more bars and one of them has no body or a little body, that's congestion like that right there. Usually a doji. That's congestion. So you got to be careful entering those. There's no rule that says you can't enter in congestion. You'll hear me say it. I've said this the other day, and I meant to talk about this yesterday. There's no rule that says you can't enter in congestion, because there will be great trades, just like this one right here, that happen in congestion. But most of you would be better off to stay out of congestion, because if you can't read the chart really well and you don't really understand what's going on, then just stay out of congestion, because you don't know if it's a good entry out of congestion or a bad entry out of congestion. So I hope that makes sense. That's advice. That's not a trading rule that we have with our. Once you learn to read this chart, you'll pretty much know when to stay out. And draw your trend lines here, and so you could still get fooled on that one. That's not the end of the world. But once you saw it once, don't fall for it twice. And some of you took both of those, and they both failed. And that's what happens. Actually, this trade, if you followed it right, would not have failed, because notice it never breaks higher. If you just put your stop one tick above the signal bar, you would have survived this. But really, just by waiting, because you just saw it happen right here, just wait, and then you get the little long trap right there, and look at it go. Now the bottom falls out of it, and it runs. And if you just catch that one trade, easy runner on it, it just takes off. And we run down, we bounce off the lows, we come back to the key entry point, but no entry there. Look at your signal bar, and that's not matching highs. That looks really tempting. And if you'd have went short there, it wouldn't have mattered. But that's the difference. When you get to the right spots, you can make small mistakes, but there's no entry there. Just wait on the lower high right here that breaks higher. Put your sell stop right there and look at it go. And you already had one leg down. And look, we run down, we actually went a little bit lower and then reversed. And several of you tried to buy this low right here with this little higher low. But notice you got this little spike and channel right here, the little brown. Let me get this out of the way. You got the little brown channel working down through there. That's the first close outside. And look what happens. It moves to a new low, and then it reverses. So if you just played it by the rules, even buying down here, you'd have been better off. But I'm going to tell you, most of you are better off to leave that alone. And that is a rule. That's the first rule in the price action manual, is don't try to pick tops and bottoms, because it's a losing strategy. If you understand what's going on here, if you're a good chart reader and you know that we just bounced off the lows and that this little channel had just played out, then yeah, you might try to pick that. Because look, if you catch that, that's an important low. You ride that all the way back up. And there's you another 330 to, there's another 20 points there. Off a single runner. And this is a spot, you got a little channel working, a little trend working up here too, but it's a little spike in channel, and that's a two-tiered channel on the upside. And then notice we move up. So I didn't mark any of this because that's just too dangerous trying to pick these bottoms. If you know you've already had a measured leg and you see this little break and the new low, and then you also see that you've had a break of this and new low, and you also see the measured leg, then you may take that trade. But notice you make the new low. Really, you need to wait on a reversal pattern. You try to go lower once, you try to go lower twice, it fails. That'd be the first place I'd go long. And that's not a perfect setup because it is a little congestive. It does make a little higher double bottom there. And you're probably going to try to get a measured move here. Measure that leg. And then look for the second leg. Notice where we went. Almost a perfect measured move before it corrects and gets a break here. But you might enter there. But if you're just patient and a little bit, notice you make a new high, first entry, second entry, and off it goes. And you really wouldn't have, you may not have had this trend channel. I actually had it drawn right there at first, and then so you should have had this, but I went ahead and just kind of moved it down. Tends to fit a little better right there, and then you get that entry. And then it's just too congestive, too sideways. You get a little bounce here, but look at that signal bar's terrible. This one's terrible. You come back and you get your first break, and then you get a higher low. If that breaks higher, we're probably going to shoot on up and try to test this high. That's the expectation, and boom, look at it go. And then it sells off. And unfortunately, there's no entry, or somebody went short, I think below this bar. I think theirs closed a little closer to the low, but it still was not a good signal bar. It's still not a good entry. If it would have broke higher and turned down, yeah, I'd be okay with that because you're a long way away. But you can't chase these trades. If you don't get a setup, here's your signal bar. That's the highest bar in the swing, so that's your signal bar. These actually have matching highs, so you could use either one of them. And guess what? Neither one of them's any good. And then then you get another one side by side, and a couple of them have, look at all those stems, no bodies. You can't go short, or you can't do anything there. Just sit tight. And unfortunately, you don't get a setup here. Runs down, makes a low. Bounces. So look at that. Look how strong that is. So you're going to try to get a retest of that low, and you're working lower and you're working lower. Now you get a double test there, and you got a little room back to the EMA. That's a good place to go long. And you could really look at that as a double top. So first entry, second entry, runs back up to the high side. You don't get a short there, unfortunately. Runs back down. Again, you don't get a long. You get a higher low here, but you're too close. It pushes on through, and you get two measured legs up, but you don't know that's going to happen, so you can't go long there. You just got to be patient. You make that new high, and it's tempting to want to go short there. But it could come back and bounce like it did, but it could bounce enough to stop you out. So wait on the lower high, and that came right here. It broke higher and turned and went down. Just go short. One tick below there when it went past through. If you waited till this closed, you can't go real short way down here. Then you get a kind of a repeat of that. It breaks higher, turns, just go short right through there. Again, you can't wait till down here to go short. And then there's even another push higher, but you can't. That's too neutral. And what does it do? It runs down the bottom. It bounces a little early, so maybe you tighten that up. Bounces off of it again. Still not a very good signal bar. Then it bounces again and makes a higher low. And we haven't reached the highs yet where it had been turning down. But maybe this is tightening it up too, and you're not back down here. So that's a possibility on a failed second entry short to go higher, but I didn't mark it. I'm not crazy about it, but it's a possibility. It's right. It's getting close to 2 o'clock, and you can't afford to make a mistake on a semi-decent trade. You want a sure thing this late in the afternoon. That's not a sure thing because it's kind of in the middle of that range right there. There's some reasons to like it, but so that was it today. I mean, there's not a lot of trades. The volatility, I mean, I wouldn't say the volatility has slowed a whole lot. Things are still relatively volatile up and down, but the volume is definitely less. I mean, there was a few days where we might have had 3 or 4 times as many bars in the window from 8:30 to 2 here. That's what the white is here. It turns white at 8:30 and it turns gray again at 2 o'clock. That's actually my trading window is 7, but I like to do this so I know where the uh, regular 8:30 open is. My yellow line tells me as well. That's what this yellow line is. That tells you where the 8:30 opening is, and the red line is where it closed yesterday at 3:15 or 3:30 or whatever time it closes. And the reason I put that on there is because if we open above or below that, there's going to be a gap on the daily chart. So by opening here, this bar at 8:30 on the daily starts here and starts working higher, where this is where it closed yesterday. So there's a gap between there. And we know most days prices are going to come back. So when we started heading lower here, that was my first target. And that's another reason I like entering on that lower high, because that's where I figure we're going at a minimum. And we may even get this measured leg like so. And you see we got a little bit more than that actually before it reversed. So anyway, always look for those measured moves. But okay, I had a slight interruption there. I apologize. I think we were done with the chart lesson for the most part. So I notice we continue to trade higher here up into the close and even into the next day's trading here. So I mean, next thing you know, this thing will be above 32 at this rate. But anyway, just a trend up, trend down, and then we really were there's still another trend back up here, and then we just went sideways into the close. So you saw the trades, and there was a little more straightforward today. I think today was a little easier than maybe what we had the last couple of days with the sideways stuff where you just didn't get many setups or anything. So hope everybody had a good trading day. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap up our week, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.